So apparently one of the most beautiful train rides in Europe is actually here in Portugal, so of course I had to try it. But the first time that I tried to take it, it was a complete disaster. It cost 60 euros and I finally took it, but only on my second attempt. The first one got cancelled, and by the end of this video I'll tell you why I'm not 100% sure you should take it and how you can have a similar experience for 9 euros and 75 cents. First, the basics. The Comboio Histórico do Douro is a historical train that runs along the Douro River, as the name implies, between Peso da Régua and Tua, about 36 kilometers of the Douro line with a stop in Pinhão, which I was told it was one of the most beautiful train stations in Portugal. More on that later. And here's the thing, this is a bit rare, because it only runs a few months a year from June to October and only 3 days a week, so Saturdays, Sundays and some Wednesdays, that's just 51 trips in the entire year. So if you want to catch it, you plan your trip around the train, not the other way around. Like I said, tickets are 60 euros for adults and 32 for children between 4 and 12. Regarding schedule, the train leaves at around 3:30, but they ask you to be there earlier so they can give you a glass of port wine. And you are back around 6:40ish, kinda. Well, in theory. We'll get to that too. Now, one important thing if you are planning to book it in 2026. Normally, this train is pulled by a steam engine from 1925, but this year it is replaced by a historical diesel locomotive from the 60s, painted in its original blue. I think it was still gorgeous, but of course it didn't have the steam coming out of it. Still charming, still historical. But if you really want a steam locomotive, maybe you should try next time. Now, before I show you how the whole day went, let me tell you a bit about what you're actually riding on. Because the train is very cute, but the line is a real monument. So the Douro line was finished in 1887, and for the time, it was a crazy piece of engineering. The valley is basically solid rock. Steep slopes falling straight into the river, very hard, but they still carved a railway through it. 26 tunnels and more than 30 bridges, with the track running so close to the water that in some parts it feels like you're actually floating on the river. This is one of the most beautiful sceneries ever. But this wasn't built for tourists. There were no tourists at the time. It was built, of course, for wine. For centuries, the only way to get port wine from these mountains down to the cellars in Vila Nova de Gaia that you have probably been to or are planning to go when you visit, it was the river itself, in a wooden boat called rabelos, which you've definitely seen if you've ever been to Porto's riverside. Beautiful boat, but a dangerous job. The Douro used to be a wild river full of rapids, and the boatmen actually died often. But the train changed everything. Suddenly, the wine and the people could move more safely. Whole villages existed in this line because of the railway. Pinhão, one of the stops we'll visit today, basically exploded from a tiny settlement into the heart of the wine trade when the train arrived in 1880. So when you are riding the train, you're not just looking at pretty views, you are actually riding the thing that built this entire region. Okay, now story time, because my history with this train did not start well. The first time that we tried to do this, we took the regular train from Porto to Régua, which, by the way, is already a gorgeous trip on its own. As you can see here, the train ride in orange is so close to the water, it's so beautiful, and I'll get to the differences between car and train later. So of course, we arrived super excited, ready for the famous historical train, and then they told us there were issues with the engine. But, okay, fine, small delay, things happen, that's okay. Except we kept waiting. and waiting in 34 degrees Celsius weather. And mind you, the historical train does not have AC, of course, it's a train from the 20s. And even outside in the shade, it was unbearable, really. And we had to wait until 5 p.m. And then they canceled the whole thing. Ugh. I was so disappointed. I was heartbroken. I was tired and sweaty. But here's the part that nobody told me. And honestly, the most useful thing I can say in this whole section. You can get all your money back. 60 euros per person for the historical train and the regular train from Porto to Régua and back. Because we'd only bought those so we could catch the historical train. And they didn't ask anything. They just refunded us, no drama. So if this happens to you, don't just accept it. Contact CP and they will refund you. And look, now I'm not even mad about it. It's a 100-year-old train. Sometimes it has moods. Just do not book this for the last day of your trip. Give yourself a backup day at least. So, attempt number 2, here we go. This time we drove, partially because the forecast said it would be even hotter, and partially because after last time, I wanted control over my own escape route. But now that I've done both, let me give you my honest opinion. So how can you get to Régua? Well, you have 2 options, as I mentioned before. Option 1 is a car and option 2 is a train, of course. And they are very different because on the train you travel along the river, especially in the last part, while by car you go through the mountains and the cities and all of that. The car ride takes usually around 1 hour and 15 minutes and it's, of course, very comfortable. Tolls are 4.75 each way, so 9.50 total, plus gas, of course. But you have full freedom, which matters because, as you'll see, this day involves a lunch detour and it's much easier with a car. And then there's option number 2, which is by train. The regular train from Porto Campanhã to Régua takes about 1 hour and 45 minutes. A round trip costs 19.60 per person. So if you are 2 people, I'm not sure if the car is cheaper, but if you are solo, the train wins, of course. However, if you are a big group, maybe consider a car. Now, here's the thing. The train to Régua is not a lesser option. The last stretch along the river is so beautiful, and if you take it, sit on the right side going and left side coming back. But basically, there's no wrong answer here. If you want the flexibility, go with a car. If you prefer something more chill that you don't have to worry about parking or anything, then just go by train. Now, if you want to have lunch before boarding the train, we also did that. Because every single friend who's familiar with the region told us the same thing, like, you have to eat at Torrão. Of course, we had to try it. So Torrão sits right where the Tâmega River meets the Douro River. And the restaurant's whole thing is the view of the water, and it's so pretty. So Torrão is a very traditional place with very traditional Portuguese dishes. Just keep that in mind. On that day, it was a Sunday, we arrived at 12:45 and asked for a table by the windows, of course, because we wanted a view. But they told us that they didn't have any available, so we had to wait in a bar, which we accepted. And to be honest, it was worth it. We waited maybe like 10-15 minutes. We had a couple of drinks, totally fine. Now, if we had accepted any table, we would have been seated instantly. So if you don't mind the view, you can eat almost immediately. But let me tell you, it was worth the wait. The view was so beautiful. And because it was so sunny, like the gold from the sun was reflecting on the water, it was beautiful. I totally recommend it. Even if the food wasn't good, which, by the way, it was. So I asked the waiter what their specialty was, and he said it was cabrito, which is like baby goat, I guess. And I love, to be honest, that is a very typical dish here in the north. My grandma makes it all the time, but it's more of a heavier dish. And because it was so hot that day, we decided to go for something lighter. But if you never had Portuguese cabrito and you are cool with having a heavier meal or the weather is just cooler, it's really good. Give it a shot. We ordered picanha. And the meat, the rice, and the beans, chef's kiss, amazing. Cannot recommend more. Loved it. The salad and the fried banana, they were okay-ish. Like, I didn't care much for them. Now, for dessert, we tried the lemon cheesecake, and it was just fine. I don't really recommend it. It's not bad, but it's not that great. Now, for prices, the whole meal, for 2 people was 46 euros. No wine, which keeps it lower, of course, but still, for that quality and that view, I think it's pretty good. Now, after lunch, we went back to the train station, and the train is usually already in the platform when you arrive. You can see it, it's just right there. But they block the path, so everyone queues up in front of it. And I won't sugarcoat this, it was a 38-degree day. Like, the queue was not in the sun, but it's still rough. But you don't have to be there. You can be inside the station. They have AC, so it's really nice. But eventually, they start letting people through. So you show your ticket, they mark your seats on their list, and from that moment, the experience actually begins. You get a glass of port wine, you get a little booklet with information about the train and the region, and if you are a lady, you also get a wooden fan, which is a cute souvenir and sounds like more of an accessory until you are in a train from the 20s with no air conditioning in July. Then it is central equipment. That fan worked overtime that day. Then, of course, the music starts. There's a traditional music group that plays in the station. They play songs like Alecrim Dourado, A Saia da Carolina, songs that every Portuguese person has in their DNA somewhere. And they don't just play it and you say goodbye, right? So they board with you on the train actually, and they keep playing during the ride and when you stop at the different stations. They were so sweet to everyone the whole day, like it's impossible not to love them. Finally, everyone boards the train and we left Régua, but a bit late. And as I would learn later, this is kind of a theme with this train. But we headed up the valley straight to Tua. And let me tell you, the scenery, I don't even have words. Just look at it. The moment the river first appears next to the window, you just feel like warm inside, like I don't even have words. Then you just keep going and you see the vineyards. It's so beautiful. I don't think there's any other place on earth that is so beautiful, I'm gonna be honest. Then you get to see the reflection of the mountains in the water, and it feels like you are in a fairy tale, to be honest. It feels magical, truly. Then you get to see like small villages, and sometimes you pass by boats and they wave at you and they might even honk, and then you wave back at them and the train also honks at them. It's really cute, I think. And you can just stand there and enjoy the view, feel the wind on your face. It is such an amazing experience. I truly believe that this part of northern Portugal has some of the best scenery in the whole country, if not the best, to be honest. I know I'm biased because I'm from here, but I don't care. Every time that I come here, I'm just wowed. But because not everything is magical, I have to warn you, the heat was getting to everyone by this point. But everyone was still excited, hanging by the windows, pointing at things, taking photos. There's something about this valley that beats the heat, really. And since we are looking at it, let me tell you why this landscape looks the way it does. Because none of this is natural. Every single one of these terraces was built by hand. If you don't know, the Douro is the oldest demarcated wine region in the world. Wine has been produced here for over 2,000 years, but in 1756, decades before anyone else thought of it, Portugal drew an official border around this valley and said only wine from inside this line can be called port. They even marked it with stone pillars, some of which still exist. And for centuries, people carved these mountains into steps. No machines, only hands, picks, and rocks. The walls you are seeing from the train window are accumulated work of about 300 years of people refusing to accept that you cannot grow wine on a cliff. And this is why this whole landscape is a UNESCO World Heritage. Not just because it's beautiful, but because it is basically a monument built by farmers. Isn't that beautiful? So that's what you are drinking when you drink port wine, a valley made by stubborn people. But then we make our first stop at Tua at around 4:35. And of course, with our musician friends already playing on a platform, of course, never off duty, these people. Technically, Tua is the end of the line for this trip, but you still stop at Pinhão on your way back. Here, people from the region are selling traditional products. For example, we saw this table with a bunch of things like spicy chouriça for 5 euros or biscoitos, that means like biscuits, for 3 euros, and they have a bunch of flavors, and the lady was explaining them to me, as you can see here. She was really sweet. And a little knowledge for you, these sellers are at the station, so not inside some exclusive train passengers only area. Remember that, because it is going to matter at the end of this video. But in this station, you still have some historical objects. In the first room you see when you get off the train, on your left, there is this room with a small collection of old railway objects. You have an old uniform, tools, pieces of the station's past. It's cute. And right next to the station, there is the Centro Interpretativo do Vale do Tua, which is more modern than the original station. And it's mainly about the history and traditions of the valley. They even have a part where you can smell like the herbs and spices from the region, which I was not expecting at all, but it was fun. Anyway, it was too hot for deep thoughts, so we did what everyone else did apparently and crammed into this little cafe that people were getting like beer and beverages from, but we actually got ice cream. Everyone was sweating inside, like solidarity in suffering, honestly. Now, something that you might have picked up on if you pay attention to details. So, if you noticed, there's only one track for both directions, right? So this means that trains have to wait for each other at the stations. So because the train cannot leave until the next one actually comes, the schedule is more of a suggestion. And of course, we were supposed to leave Tua much earlier, but we only left at 5:30. Almost an hour late, but you know, it's fine. Just a tip. If you have to wait for whatever reason, don't wait inside the train, for the love of God. They don't have AC, the windows barely help because there's no wind. Just go inside the station and relax. They will come to you and tell you to onboard the train when the time comes. But to be honest, once you accept the delay as part of the experience, it's fine. And you are in the Douro, there's ice cream, there's live music. To be honest, there are worse places to be stuck in. Now, like I mentioned before, on the way back, we stopped at Pinhão at around 5:50. And this is a stop that a lot of people were actually waiting for. This station has a lot of azulejos, so those blue and white tiles that Portugal is famous for. But unlike many other places, these are not just generic decoration. There are 24 panels here, made of about 3,000 tiles installed in 1937. And together they tell one story: how port wine is made. Panel by panel, the harvest, women carrying baskets of grapes, beautiful. Remember that rabelo boats from the beginning of this video? This is them, painted in blue and white of the walls of the station that replaced them. I actually love this detail so much, like the train in a way killed the rabelo boats' jobs, right? And then the train station put them on its walls like a monument to the thing it replaced. It's very poetic. So yes, when I say this might be one of the most beautiful stations in the country, I'm not exaggerating. Not just because they're beautiful, but also because of the story behind it. But even if you never take the historical train, I think Pinhão, as a region, is absolutely worth a visit on its own. Now, for souvenirs, there's actually a wine shop here at the station selling wine, t-shirts, just general souvenirs if you want them as well. Here's my local suggestion, okay? Disclaimer, I'm not a wine expert, okay? But I really like this wine called Papa Figos, but you can buy it at any supermarket in Portugal for basically the same price. But if you want to buy it here, for convenience, do it. Again, if you want something more special, because this is more of a cheapish wine, I'm sure they can help you here. They have a lot more knowledge than me, I'm sure, so. But then, like all good things, our stop here at Pinhão had to end. So we left Pinhão around 6:10 for the last stretch back to Régua. And this part of the ride was the sweetest one, literally. They came through the carriages handing everyone a little bag of repousados da Régua and an apple. If you don't know about repousados da Régua, they are these traditional hard candies made of sugar and honey but wrapped in paper. They have been sold in Régua for generations. The candy sellers are a whole other tradition on its own. And of course, our musician friends still playing, same energy as our one. So they go around all the carriages and they started in our carriage and they also ended here. They had the same energy as in the beginning. It was so cute, like the whole carriage singing along. Even tourists that didn't know the lyrics were clapping. It was so cute. I love them, protect them at all costs. And then finally we arrived at Régua at around 6:40 and it was still 36 degrees at almost 7 p.m. I was exhausted, I was sweaty, but I was weirdly at peace, and just happy that I did this, but in desperate need of a shower, to be honest. Okay, so before I give you my final thoughts, and because I know that you might need this, here's exactly how you can book it, plus what seats and carriages to pick. So for buying tickets, you can go on cp.pt and book early because we have a lot of tourists and some dates sell out instantly. So, only 51 trips a year. Then you can pick the carriage that you want. Now, here's a tip I haven't seen anywhere else, and it comes from having done this twice. Well, 1.5 times, I guess. The carriages are not all the same. These are 5 historical carriages. The oldest one was built in 1908, more than a century old. That's crazy. On our first and cancelled attempt, we actually had picked the first carriage, which was one of the green ones. But this time we picked the last one, which is one of the brown ones that is all wood. And for me, I'm gonna be honest, this is not even a competition. The wooden one is way prettier, in my opinion, of course. Everything, walls, ceilings, benches, it's this warm, honey-colored wood, and it feels like riding inside a piece of antique furniture, in the best way possible. Don't get me wrong, the green one is cute too. I personally just prefer the wooden one. But besides that, picking the last carriage also has other benefits. For example, when we booked the first one, it was super packed. There was no empty seat. While in this one, there were plenty of empty seats. We could go around, go to other seats, and it was totally fine. Also, because it is the last carriage, you can go to the back of the train and take some cool pictures or videos like this. Also, some important information, the carriages have toilets if you need them, so you're safe. And this is a tip that I had no idea about. So this train does not make a U-turn, so it doesn't turn around. That means then when it goes from Régua to Tua and it comes back, only the locomotive moves. So the locomotive, when you go to Régua, is on one side, and when you stop at Tua, they take the locomotive and move it to the back of the train. That is now the front of the train, I guess. So this means that when you are picking seats on the seat map, choose the ones on the top of the screen, because these are the seats that will have the river view both ways. Actually, the first time that we booked it, we booked the seats on the left side. So I'm glad in a way that that trip got cancelled, because we wouldn't be able to move because the carriage was so full. So we would be stuck looking at rocks most of the time. So glad we didn't. So finally, my thoughts. 60 euros. Is it worth it? Let me be fair first. So the train is gorgeous, especially the wooden carriages. I love them so much. The music is great, especially if you want more of a traditional experience. I think it's so cool because they also are dressed in like traditional outfits, so that's lovely. And they are so joyful. So they made my day, I'm gonna be honest. And they do take care of you in a way, right? So they give you water throughout the trip because it is so hot and there's no AC. You also have the glass of port wine, the fan, the booklet, the roçados, and the apple. It is a curated and complete experience, in my opinion. Like, nobody is scamming anyone in a way, right? But remember when I told you that the sellers at Tua are at the station, not a train? Here's why. So the regular train, the Interregional, runs on the exact same line. Same river, same tunnels, same views, same stations. So it is way cheaper to just take the regular train. I actually did the math and it costs all around €9.75. That's a lot cheaper for the same route that the historical train does for 60. But like I said, they are different experiences. And like, yes, you get all those goodies, but I think the main pro for the historical train is actually that you can go around and you have these outdoor spaces between carriages that you can take pictures and enjoy the wind. So I think that that's probably my biggest plus of taking that train. But still, €60, it is a bit pricey, not gonna lie. And like, you can go see the tiles in Pinhão because it's a public station. You can walk right in. And if you go to Tua, the original products are there. You can just buy them. At least on the days that the historical train runs, they are there, probably, I assume. And the like quote-unquote normal train, the Interregional, even has like a slightly vintagey vibe to it, honestly. I like it. But like I said, you don't get to have like these outdoor spaces to take photos. Now, if you or your parents or your grandparents want a no-fuss experience that you just walk in and you sit down and everything's fine, then this can be nice. But if you want my honest opinion, I would say that the boat rides from Porto might be a better option, to be honest. Because with the historical train, you have to go from Porto to Régua, because I assume that if you are a tourist, you're probably staying in Porto, right? So you have to go from Porto to Régua, and only then you have the historical train. But with boats and cruises and whatnot, they leave from Porto and they go to Régua or to Pinhão, depends. So you don't have to worry about that. Like, you're just in Porto and you go to the boat and that's it. And usually they also have curated experiences with port wine. Some you even go to vineyards. It really depends. And, you know, some are really cheap, some are more expensive. It really depends on how much you are willing to spend and what you want to do. I have a list of them that I have curated, and I will link it below if you want to check it. But yes, I think that's a better option, to be honest. But you know, the train is also really nice. And maybe if you don't like boats or you get nauseous or something, but you still want to go to Régua and see the vineyards and see the river, maybe this is a good alternative. But I can say I recommend it at 100%, to be honest. But just my opinion. Now that's it for this video. I hope that you at least learned a bit. I hope you enjoyed the landscape as much as I did. If you are planning a trip to Porto and the Douro, my full 3-day Porto itinerary, the exact spots I send my friends or my family to when they visit, it's linked in the description. It's free. You just have to leave your email so we can stay in touch. I won't spam, pinky promise. Now, tell me in the comments, €60 experience or the 9.75? See you in the next one. Bye!